At his thumbs.
Okay, we are recording. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Coach's Corner. Welcome to the club.
So non-enthusiastic.
Yeah.
How
Thank
many?
God Marina's here.
Yeah.
I do add so much.
Why are you so brain
All
dead,
right.
Marina?
Why am I so brain dead? I don't know. I just feel like I've been nonstop sitting at my fucking computer for days.
You gotta caffeinate up. I'm breaking every caffeine rule that I've ever had over the course of the last month. Like
See, I have
I'm
been.
chronically caffeinated out.
I have been, but I had less coffee. I'd only had my double shot of espresso this morning, and my hunger was up, so I've been actually eating. So I'm like, you know what? Let me not overdose on caffeine today.
My diet's actually been pretty good. I got 3 meals in today. Food wise has been pretty
I
fucking
got
good.
two.
I'm healthy as I'm healthy AF, but like my caffeine consumption, my sleep, not so much. Not so
Not
much. Not
not
so
healthy
much.
AF.
And now I got Riley coming, and one of our recommendations was to literally manage everything, like legitimately be neurotic to a point where it's like every time he pees, check his weight. Every time he shits, check his weight.
Wait,
Like
really?
legitimately check. Yeah, like he was like from Monday, from Monday through to the show, be on it where it's like literally every couple of hours you have a recorded weight to match the look to the weight and just kind of
And the
keep what he was
time.
calling like a weight to look ratio the entire time so that we know exactly what weight he looks good. And then all we have to do is match, his body weight to that point over and over and over again. Because remember, he's got to make weight. So and we're putting in things, we're putting in, we're starting the dry out process 3 days early. Diazide goes in 2 days before, right? On Monday night. So it's one of those ones where it's like we know the body weight's going to drop. And then from there, it's just a matter of getting it back up to that weight that we kind of isolated to make sure that that's what we're stepping on stage at after weigh-ins. So it'll be a
It's
mission, but
crazy.
it's even one of those where he's like, dude, if you take his room key and like, go every fucking like wake him up to eat every 3 or 4 hours if you have to that night, and like just make sure you keep checking his weight and get it to where you need it to be is what it comes down to.
It's
So it'll be
crazy.
fun. Yeah. Lots of extra work Monday and Tuesday. That's all. So anyway, with that being said, Steve, you want to go first this week?
Uh, yeah, you want to go back and forth one on one?
Sure. What do
Okay,
you got?
I got a question about my client Gabby actually that I posted up from another female just asking about what her diet has been like for her show. So I guess I figured I'll just start with that one because it was the first one I wrote down. Um, so Big Cat's 7 week, well, under 7 now. So 6 weeks and 4 days out. So I guess I don't know. Have we ever had a question like this? Do you start from like the beginning of prep? Do you just should I just say what her diet is now?
Yeah, I mean, I would just give a general broad idea of the process there. You know what I mean?
Okay. So we started her prep at 24 weeks out. Um I pretty much for the first 4 weeks kind of hammered her with like a harder diet. Like we cut a good amount of food up front. We got about like 6 or 7 pounds, I believe. I'd have to look off. And then I refed her up until 16 weeks out again. And then we started to slowly transition down. Um, at 9 weeks out, I gave her, so 2 weeks ago, I gave her a full diet break for a full 7 days where I pretty much just doubled her carbs and I put 25% more fats in and I cut her cardio down by 70%. And then I just started kind of digging her into the ground again last week again. So she's down 4 pounds over the last week. I added a little bit of base food in um actually today to hold her for the rest of the week. And then I've pretty much been refeeding her every seventh day. So um she's coming in fine. I mean, she's ahead. I know Tim and Marina both kind of back that up, two opinions I trust. And so I'm pretty much just gonna hold her um for the next probably week to 2 weeks and then just kind of dig her into the ground a bit harder just to get the glutes in a bit more. And I feel like she'll be right there
Yeah, for sure.
because her front, like her midsection is definitely ready.
Mm-hmm.
And her shoulders are right there, so I feel
And
like a
glutes
little
are
more,
staying super full for her.
yes, for super full. So I feel like a little
Yeah,
more
she's
on
got
the,
those short muscle bellies.
a little more on the tie in, a little more on like the quad, especially from the front and the side, and she'll be good to go. But I mean, 7 weeks, 6.5 weeks at this point is so much time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
She's
yeah,
ready.
that's pretty much it. She's not on any crazy fucking drugs and all this shit either. They asked me a question about that too, but I'm not going to get into what she's on or anything like that, just for her own privacy. But she's not on any anabolics or anything like that.
All right, so question numero uno from me, something like that. Let's see here. Where am I? I don't know. Hold on. I know I wrote this down. Oh, here we go. And I saw this is going from my last question, and JJ was just on here. So, how does stress change blood work or influence the body physiologically? And I added that physiologically, JJ, but I'm sure that's what you're going for there. So how does stress change blood work or influence the way that the body kind of works or operates? I don't know. You want to start there, Steve?
How does stress affect blood
Change
work?
Loaded
blood work.
question.
Yeah, or influence the way the body works.
I mean, a lot. So
Yeah.
I think too, like what the first thing, a big thing that we should look at is what's the duration of the stress period, right? Is it like one shitty day of work and then, or is this like, I don't know, you're going through like some crazy shit, buying a house, that whole process, like your body doesn't know good and bad stress, right? So cortisol is cortisol. So are you buying a house? Are you going through a 2, 3, 4 month process of that or longer? Did you just have a kid, which is, a great stress. We look at it like that, but you're not sleeping a lot. Your cortisol is going to spike through the roof or God knows until the baby's sleeping through the night. A death, right? It's prolonged cortisol. Anything with prolonged cortisol is going to have a greater effect on things or hormones. Fucking whether it's estrogen, your testosterone levels. It's the longer in my opinion, the longer the stress is going and the cortisol is staying up like that, and depending how high, the more that shit's going to crash your hormones down.
Yeah.
So appetite for sure is going to be affected. Insulin sensitivity, all that shit, a lot. So
yeah, I think what you basically just meant, like you basically brought up like emotional stressors. But I mean, what I'm trying to get across
physical
recently
stress
is like, yeah, we have three main pillars of stress, right? And like they could be acute or they could be chronic, to Steve's point. It's like, is it something short term or is it something long term that's acute versus chronic? Right. And at the end of the day, you have to look at the main factors that we have here. Chemical, which is food, drugs, medications, things of this nature. Right. Food is absolutely a chemical stressor, though, that we have to take into consideration. We have physical stress, and then we have emotional stress. Steve just touched on a lot of different emotional or mental stress, right? Like if you're buying a house, are we just stressed out because of maybe a relationship ended? Yeah, something like that. Bills to pay, work, things of that nature. And then physical stress could be a lot of different factors. Like obviously we as within the bodybuilding industry and coaches, like we have to look at people that are overdoing physical work, right? Which is like, sometimes we get people that are doing fucking, they're training 5 days a week, doing cardio 7 days a week. On top of that, they want to do fucking Zumba classes and F45 and this, that, the third, and going for 19 hikes a day or some stupid shit like that. But like the bottom line is you can overdo a lot of physical exertion, but then there's also other physical stressors that I think are more chronic, right, in nature, like your guts can be a very real physical or chronic stressor, a physical chronic stress, right? Where it's like that gut can be jacked up for years, and it could be an underlying stress that is causing an issue downstream in terms of the body's, functionality and or blood work that we're looking at, right? Yeah, like it can, wreak havoc on your immune system, right? Which is another system in the body that can kind of, be inundated with too much stress and become a chronic or be inundated with too much going on. It could be a chronic stressor, if you would, right? Like there's definitely a difference between chronic and acute stress, but both of them will impact blood work, right? And it's like, to Steve's point, is it a temporary thing where it's like this person they were going to do lab work and maybe they got, they were running late, right? And they that heartbeat started to get up there. They're running, trying to get to this appointment they have to get blood work done. Maybe they even, ran a red light right before getting there or something like that. And now they're really like, they're elevated, like everything's elevated. They're very, a lot of adrenaline being produced. and then they go in and they get their lab work done, your lab work is going to come back a little skewed, at least as far as cortisol is concerned, right? Potential glucose reading on that day will be skewed, maybe even some other metrics there. But ultimately, what we're looking at there is an acute stress that could be managed within like 24 hours. You know what I mean? And we could go back and get more blood work done, and we could see some other acute stressors or things like getting a cold, allergies, stuff like this, where you go. And again, we could see like white blood cell counts being off, and we could go back literally just 2 weeks later to get the same labs, and our white blood cells could be radically different, right? And then again, those chronic stressors are things that are going to cause a little bit more like real quote unquote issues that we might see within lab work. Like Steve was talking about your hormones, and like obviously if cortisol is too high for a long time, there's ways that we produce these hormones. And when one hormone like cortisol is out of whack and elevated for so long, how we produce that hormone is how we produce other hormones too. So essentially what we're doing is we're feeding this one pathway so much and so often that we don't have enough to feed these other pathways what we need for the bare minimum. So we go get our lab work done. This hormone's all out of whack. These hormones are now low because of it. And we have to create more balance there to feed all those pathways appropriately. You good there, guy? So yeah, there's all types of different, there's all types of different ways that it can affect. Though, like thyroid is something that can be dramatically impacted by either semi-acute or chronic stressors. Inflammation is the biggest one here. That it's ultimately going to get impacted one way or the other, right? Like stress is going to be a direct pathway to higher levels of inflammation. And then how are those higher levels of inflammation impacting the body is essentially what it comes back to in terms of the blood work and or influencing change in terms of the way that the body works. But yeah, stress is definitely the number one thing here. And I think a lot of people have, we say stress and it automatically evokes this feeling of like an emotion, right? Where it's like, I'm not stressed, because you associate stress with like frustration and anger and like, these types of emotions. But the reality is stress can be a multitude of different things that you might not even know is going on. Like I said, you might have a chronic gut health issue, but because you don't have gas and bloating or diarrhea all the time or constipation, you don't associate with this because there's no GI distress. So you're not associating with this being the chronic stressor, but it is a chronic stressor for sure. So it's not a feeling or an emotion that you're evoking, right? It's a very real world word to describe something that is causing physiological changes, right? So it's one of those things where stress is the underlying issue. We see things that are out of whack as far as blood work, or we're not, we're seeing like weight loss resistance, or we're seeing some things going on that just aren't adding up. In most cases, there is a stressor. I would say in all cases, there is a stressor. We need to figure out what that stressor is and then how we go about fixing that stressor. And that's usually the answer.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
So what do you got, Steve?
I got another thyroid question.
Chief.
I feel like we just answer thyroid questions. Can we talk about bringing gear and supplements on a flight? No, I'm not bringing no fucking drugs on a plane. Fuck that.
Yeah, and like I said, I told you too.
I'm also not giving advice
day,
on that. Fuck that.
I just
You're
don't
on your
know.
own, Raph.
I'll be 100%. I bring it with me everywhere. I have brought it with me everywhere I've gone. I always put it in a checked bag, not something that I'm carrying on. Obviously, goes in my checked bag, and I've never had an issue with that whatsoever. But again, when you're talking about out of country flights, I don't know. I have no experience going through customs. And I wouldn't feel comfortable. And I told you this, like saying anything about that in terms of telling you what to do there, other than I wouldn't do it. And realistically, if you're only going away for 3 to 5 days or something like that, not really a concern. You're going to be okay, especially if you're on long acting esters. I wouldn't really worry about it.
Yeah, that's what I tell people. I mean, I've never done steroids personally, but that's what I tell people. Don't bring them.
Puerto Rico. I bring all my shit to Puerto Rico.
There you go.
But I also
thought it was the
don't.
Dominican Republic.
I also don't have like a lot of steroids
Stop lying.
that I bring.
Stop lying.
Yeah.
But I was
Stop
just when I went last to Puerto Rico, I brought all my shit. I didn't even check my bag. I just brought it on my carry-on.
Really?
Why are you lying?
Brought my carry-on, even with my pen, my little cart, so I can.
Yeah, but you're
zen
also
out.
Prescribed.
Oh well.
Yeah, but how would they know? They didn't go through anything.
I know, but you might have gotten lucky. What happens if he doesn't get lucky?
Oh yeah, true. I have no idea.
You would have been able to provide a prescription where you would have been fine.
Yeah.
So big difference there.
But yeah,
so what's the question for thyroid, Steve?
So it might make a little more sense to you, but this says, how can overtraining affect my thyroid function?
Stress.
So again, like we just talked about, physical stressor. Yeah,
So,
overtraining is a physical stressor.
I didn't know if we wanted to touch on stress again or anything else. So
Yeah.
that's why I said
Yeah,
I don't
no, I
know
would
how
say
you want to
it's-
take this one.
And remember, like I just talked about, inflammation, like we're driving inflammation. So, like you doing that much, especially if you're under eating relative to how much you're training, the bottom line is that's a stress all the way around. It's a chemical stress as far as under eating is concerned, relative to the amount that you're training. The training itself is a physical stressor. And then on top of that, we have to understand the type of stress in terms of training is directly to drive more inflammation. So now you have inflammation on top of inflammation. Right. And that inflammation, think about it in the body is like, I've probably said this on here before. I've said it to a lot of people, but it's like, all of these systems, all of our cells, they all communicate via these little cell phones that they have, and they all have to work together. So these cell phones are extremely imperative to the way that the body works, right? Like we're talking about the thyroid, we have what's called a negative feedback loop, right? So if there's not enough thyroid hormone, active thyroid hormone to feed what we're asking the body to do, which is very important, right? Because we have reference ranges, which are great. But at the end of the day, if you're asking your body to do more, right, and more by training and training and training, at the end of the day, you might not fall within that reference range in terms of where your best, where your best abilities are, so to speak, right? So it comes down to the reality, like what you're asking your body to do, right? If you don't have enough hormone to support that, your body starts to send signals to the brain. The brain will then send signals to the pituitary. The pituitary sends signals to the thyroid, right? And then the thyroid produces these hormones, right? And then those hormones have to go to target tissues to be able to be converted to active hormones, right? So you can see now, you don't have to worry about all the details there, but you can see how all these systems work together, right? It's a chain of events that's happening. So all these systems need their little cell phones. When you're super, super inflamed, think about it as it's causing static interference, right? So now all these cell phones, they're trying to scream to each other. And they're like, I can't understand what the fuck you're saying, dude. And it's like the signals aren't traveling the way that they should travel. Therefore, you end up with these downstream issues in terms of not getting the result that you should be based off the natural chain of events of the body.
Yep. Cool.
You can tell I've had a lot of caffeine again today, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're making me more.
Come on,
You're making
baby.
me more fucking tired.
Yeah.
You're making me look extra brain dead.
Oh, my turn. Sorry. My bad.
I was just gonna sit here in silence.
So this person put not a competitor. How do I know it's time to mini cut?
Glucose levels, appetite, body fat's coming on quicker. I mean, those would be like the three main markers I'd look at. If he doesn't have like a coach and there's nobody knowledgeable there to at least
I think it was a she.
she was, if she's not, those would be my three biggest things. Your appetite, if body fat's coming on, and if you're taking glucose levels, especially fasted, if they're starting to rise up into the high 90s, and body fat's accumulating a little quicker, especially in your stubborn trouble areas, like where you add fat first and it's last to come off, then probably time to start cutting a little bit.
What do you got on this, Marina? What you say?
The only thing I'd add is if you're just like not feeling an so I do think that you should be bored at certain periods of your process, but if it's been an extended period of time and you need a little bit of a kick in the ass, that can also be another reason.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I would just say, I don't know if you're not competing, what the fuck are you doing a mini cut for? Right? Like I would probably say the mini cut for you probably isn't going to be as advantageous. Like what's the point really?
Yeah, probably
right?
not like a mini cut, then like a dieting phase.
Yeah, like why not?
Oh wait,
is this?
I thought. I'm sorry. I thought this was like a competitor in like an off season.
No, it says not a competitor
at all. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So so I wouldn't even do that. I would just fucking diet when get blood work. If your fucking thyroid's starting to lose function and everything's are starting to plateau and you're, foods, God, for someone doing this on their own, I wouldn't have them go below 14. Like I'd be like, if your food's getting lower than that on your own, don't start pushing it more. And if it's been a while, if it's been like 3-4 months, at least, no more, just start to, reverse out, but just diet down.
I would say my one caveat for most lifestyle clients is that you just want to make sure that you're not dieting as much as you are dieting, that you're not
Yes.
dieting as much as you are dieting. So at least in whatever, if you spend 6 months out of the year dieting, you should spend 6 months at maintenance or a surplus, right? And or sometimes, honestly, the longer I go with a client like that, the longer I'll keep them at maintenance and surplus. So sometimes it might be, time and a half, right? So it's like if I spend, whatever 4 months in a dieting phase for somebody, especially if they're relatively lean to begin with, that might be a long dieting phase for them. So maybe they need 6 months off of dieting thereafter, right? So we're essentially not dieting any more than we are dieting.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Does that make sense? Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would just say, at the time that you feel like you need a mini cut, like what is it? Like that's maybe a psychological thing that you have to, factor in for yourself, where it's like, are you just a person saying like, oh, I feel fluffy and I think or I'm going on vacation or something like that. That to me is like garbage reasons, right? Like don't diet for a garbage reason. You're wasting your time, right? Like put together a very long period of time that you have where you can stay committed, dedicated to a process, stick to that process, get the extended result that you're looking for. And then from there, like I said, revert back to a maintenance or surplus for a longer period of time. And then essentially, I wouldn't say a bikini summer mini cut. And I know you're throwing out like you're kind of playing like, I don't want to say devil's advocate, but you're kind of like, supporting the thought process there a little bit from a different, because, obviously Paulina works with us and she does it, the way that we put it together for her. But, the bottom line there is I would just say, again, I wouldn't call it a mini cut. Like that would
It'd just
be
be a dieting
like,
phase.
yeah, just diet for the summer if you want to diet for the summer. But obviously, like I said, make sure that that's a time where you can stay committed and dedicated to a process. You're not just going to go out and blow your entire dieting process on high nudes every weekend in your bikini. But yeah, I would just say
Sounds like me.
I would never look at. Most people aren't going to get that much of a result out of a typical mini cut, which is like an 8 to 10 week diet. Like it's just not going to happen in terms of getting that much of an effect. Again, when we're looking at mini cuts, when you hear that terminology thrown around, it's usually built into a competitor's off-season process to where we are essentially not really looking to lose dramatic amounts of body weight or but we're trying to start to develop the symptoms, so to speak, of lower body fat levels, which is improved glucose sensitivity, like Steve talked about, increases in hunger, maybe even losing some body fat to create more runway to push up again. But it's essentially built into a concept of growing, not cutting. You know what I mean? So again, the end result of a mini cut isn't to be super cut. If you want to be super cut, buy it. Right.
Yeah.
And then we have a Thomas put stress. I trained and prepped for 10 years, took 2 years off for surgery and distress. I had no idea what distress felt like. It was like the body and mind.
I think he's
Healing.
saying de-stress, not distress.
Took 2 years off for surgery and de-stress and had no idea what de-stress felt like. It was like the body and mind healing. I'm not exactly sure what you're saying there, Thomas. I'll be honest with you, but I would say everybody needs a break. And I would always tell somebody too, like at the end of the day, think about this logically, right? Like, the greatest athletes in the world get a full-blown off season where they're taking like legitimate time off. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And we might not necessarily need that in the sport of bodybuilding and growth. Like maybe we need a little bit more of a consistent process there. But within that, there should be built-in times where it's like, hey, we are giving our body a little bit of a break, a little bit more tender love and care. And ultimately, what that does is create a more responsive environment. So it's like for anybody that's like, I did this for 10 years, and I know you're not necessarily saying this, but some people are very adamant about the fact that they just dug and dig and dug and dig. And it's like, yeah, that's cool. And it's definitely going to work for some people based on the individual resilience that we all have, right? Like that is our genetic gifts, is our resilience to the amount of stress that we can handle and recover from and all this different stuff. But for a lot of people, it's almost like, how much better could we be, or how much more longevity out of the sport can we get, right? If we did give ourselves a little bit more of these built-in methodical strategic breaks. And sometimes it doesn't have to be that methodical or strategic. It's just like, hey, I'm going away on vacation. Okay. Well, a lot of us that are listening here now, or that we know of, can easily raise our hand. And we're that person that's like, I go on vacation, I still train. I still get my steps in. I still eat pretty well. I still do all these things. So it's like, you're not even really taking off for things like vacations from time to time. So when are we taking extended times off, right? Trying to help that, process of kind of reducing inflammation or supporting even the body's anti-inflammatory response, and just kind of giving our body a little bit of break, a little bit of TLC, and kind of promoting more longevity out of our process, which we all know when it comes to bodybuilding, the number one thing that you can't defeat is the amount of time that's necessary to be able to get to the end result. So if we know that, right, then there should be times that we're giving our body a little bit more of a break in multiple different ways, whether it's the types of foods that we're consuming, training, right, just reducing inflammation in general. So all those things should be considered, I think.
Yep. My turn.
Yeah, go.
How can I raise my T3 levels naturally I'm assuming obviously with no medication. So
Raise T3 levels naturally, you said?
yeah, so I messaged this girl back, but she never answered because I asked us like where the level was, obviously. But I did tell her like first and foremost, obviously, like before we get into like the supplementation aspect of things, I did tell her like, you know, where I asked her where things are at, right? And then I asked her if she was in a calorie deficit and if so, for how long, but she didn't answer. So hypothetically speaking, if you're in a deficit, how long's it been, right? You might need to start to reverse your food out and start to get your food back up a bit. And if she answers too, I was going to tell her gut health. How's your gut health, right? So definitely
Yeah.
something you want to look at. Even really too where her liver's at. You know, that's definitely something too. And then you know, some over-the-counter supplements like iodine, selenium, Forsolin, right? Things like that. What's that supplement you told me about, Tim? Metabolic activator, right? You told
Metabolic activator.
you
Which
told
one
me
is
about that months ago. It's like a drop.
I don't remember.
Yeah, but you told me it was really good. Because like you said, you said it had B vitamins in it. I believe riboflavin it had, iodine, selenium. You sent me
Yeah,
the
it's
link.
definitely it's a good one.
Yeah,
Sounds like a good one.
you sent me the link.
Yeah. No, I know. I listen. At the end of the day, it's definitely. I mean, I think everything you said is dead on there. It's like sooner or later you got to look at. Honestly, I would say the most common things there, like you said, stress. Like you got to reduce stress at a certain point. Like, and that's one of those ones too, where it's like we were just talking about this with chronic underlying stressors. You got to reduce stress if you want to see that thyroid come up. And stress might be emotional stress, it might be physical stress. In this case, it might be your gut. In this case, right? All those stressors are applicable, and food that you mentioned too. All of those things are applicable here. But you also, one of the biggest things I see with thyroid health is like micronutrient gaps, where you just don't have, you know, you're not facilitating, especially when it comes to bodybuilding too, or like people that are eating like a bodybuilder. It's just white rice and chicken, ground beef and potatoes, Like there's not enough nutrient density or variety within that to be able to get what we need to fortify the body with those cofactors that are necessary for the production of these hormones, right? Or the conversion of these hormones. So,
Yep.
you know, bottom line is, to C's point, like we will put in, you know, some of those micronutrients, sometimes just fortify the diet with it, but you can manage that through your diet and getting enough vitamins and minerals, and then making sure that you have a gut that can absorb those vitamins and minerals, right? But I think the one thing that I would say here is like, you can't underestimate the stress. I have a client who she was actually married, ended up getting divorced, was out of this relationship for a solid, let's say, I don't know, year and a half, right? And this entire time she's living on her own now. She has her own bills. Like they had bought a house recently before getting divorced. So now the house is all on her. She's working chronically to be able to keep up with it. For all intents and purposes, she's doing a really good job. It's not like she's running into any issues. Now she's an independent woman doing her goddamn thing, right? And then, but all the while, the blood work was kind of like, meh, just wasn't that like effective. You know what I mean? As far as getting the response back that we look for. And then wait, Steve, all of a sudden, this person meets somebody, right? They get into a relationship where she's now excited, elated. Every week is going by. They're going out on dates. It's been such a good time. We end up running blood work after a few months of these two being together, right? And like directly, the blood work that we got when she was still single versus the blood work that she got when she was happy, involved with somebody, and such a good positive thing happening in her life. Her thyroid made a miraculous rebound after like a year and a half of being suppressed, and getting worse. And now all of a sudden she has this in front of her. We're still doing all the same stuff. She is a competitor that's pushing really hard in off season. And then all of a sudden she gets her cycle back out of nowhere, right? And she's on certain compounds where we wouldn't have expected her necessarily yet, but her cycle comes back, signaling hormone comes back, thyroid literally doubles, right? And it goes from like whatever 2 to like damn near 4, right? And it's like this, and that's a huge rebound for people that don't know. Like that's a miraculous rebound. And again, we did nothing to facilitate this necessarily, but nothing different at all. She's been in the same consistent type of phases over and over and over again. And it really just came back to this relationship status is the best thing that we can equate it to. And it's like everything is riding high now. You know what I mean? Getting a regular cycle, all this different stuff. And it's just this huge, you know, yeah, big difference just with the removal or of stress or additive of something positive in their life. So you can't negate
I
that.
love that.
But yeah,
I
like
love
Steve was saying,
love.
yeah, go after yourself. But
So that sounded like our love
interesting.
story, Tim.
Miss you too, Matt. Miss you too, Matt. Yeah, right. Steve came into my life and my blood work has just gotten so good I don't even need TRT anymore.
It's
I
because
just
you.
pop
It's
I just pop
because
boners whenever he FaceTime me.
it's because you rub my beard.
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit. He's but barf.
She's jealous.
Whatever.
She
Yeah,
sounds
obviously
jealous.
she's just jealous. Clearly. Clearly.
No, you know
Um,
We're actually filming The Notebook too.
What?
I think isn't it Brokeback Mountain? Not the Notebook, right? The Brokeback Mountain's the gay one, isn't it?
Why'd you have to go there?
Oh,
Why'd you have to?
Um,
God.
when do you start cutting water prior to a show? And they put in parentheses, no, well, they didn't put that. I put that, but they did say no diuretic use.
Start diazide at 12 weeks out.
Actually, I
Tone
can't
at a
do it.
month
I was
out.
just saying, I don't know if this is a male or a female either.
When does start cutting water? Well,
Yeah, prior to a show.
I think we'll all agree here. You never want to cut water completely.
Yeah.
So that's how you look. You're not going to look your best on stage
Unless you're like 250 on stage.
Well, yeah. I mean, but start to scale back again. It depends on the person. Some people need more water. Some need less. Some are going to need more just because it's what makes them pop and fills them out. And they're already dry as the damn desert, and the water's really not affecting them. Some people, could be as little as 4 to 8 ounces between meals the day before, day off. It might be even less, but just enough to obviously supply the muscle with what it needs for that fullness and kind of help flush the carbs that you're, loading on into the muscle. I mean, even the fats, right? So it's going to help them as well. So, it really, again, that's such a 180 degree
Individual.
dimensional question. It's like impossible to tell you.
I would say a decent, this isn't the case 100% of the time. Like I can't really say this with all like certainty, right? Like this is not something that I would necessarily just blatantly say here, but I would say a semi decent, maybe kind of rule of thumb here is the more muscularity somebody has, the more water you can
They're
cut.
going to need.
But sometimes you just get dry motherfuckers. It doesn't matter how much
I know.
muscle tissue they have.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're just dry as hell going into the show. Like you don't really need to worry about water at all. If anything, you want to give them a little bit more in between meals or maybe with meals if you notice that's the right call with that person.
Right.
But the bottom line is there are going to be people that need a little bit more fluid to maintain that level of fullness. But again, bottom line is the less muscle somebody has, typically, the more water you're going to want to keep in. And you can still manage that maybe to a certain degree where it's like, hey, I want you to have 2 liters on show day or 3 liters, depending on what time this person's going to hit stage. Or maybe I want you to have like whatever, 500 milliliters between meal 1 and meal 2, or whatever the case might be. You're still managing that and controlling it a little bit more to be able to have more of a consistent look of things. But ultimately, it's one of those where I think the less muscled somebody is, in most cases, the less I'd want to mess with the water as far as pulling it out or pulling it down too much. And get too caught up in that kind of a variable. If anything, the smaller they are, the more I want them full, the more I want them to pop, versus the bigger guy that's already naturally going to have that a little bit more so,
Right.
But to Steve's point, that's really something that you should be managing. Like, I was just telling them before the show, like we have a guy going, this coming next week. And his process is going to be a long process of a decent bit of diuretics. And we're going to pull down that water. And we're really going to manage that from meal to meal. But again, typically, that might not be the case where I might have, a female going into a show and I'm making her drink 3 liters of water that day before prejudged, let alone start to cut it back the day before the show. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Go ahead. What do you got, Steve? What are you laughing about, Marina?
What? Nothing.
Probably updating her Tinder profile or some shit.
Yeah, sure.
Was it my excessive hand usage?
No.
No, because I was fucking going right now. I was fucking getting it with my fucking hands. Yeah. Fucking karate.
I'm just
What do you got,
joking.
Steve?
It's really aggressive of you.
Thank you.
I just came off cycle a month ago. How can I ensure that the gains I have made on cycle I can keep when I'm off?
Don't train like a bitch.
I was just about to say that. So I think a big misconception is like, oh, you're going to put all this muscle on a steroid cycle on, and then you're going to lose it all when you come off. And that's not the fucking case. As long as your food is still where it needs to be, you're getting all the fucking meals in, you're sleeping, recovering, and training your fucking ass off, you're not going to lose muscle coming off of a steroid cycle for 3-4 months.
Yeah, I mean, you also, I mean, for most of us, we would also have you on some sort of baseline, therapy there.
Yes.
Where,
Yeah.
where
And
it's like you're never going to be so low that, like, in other words, my only caveat to that would be if you're putting in enough supplements to be super physiological level to where it's like, your testosterone's 3,000 nanograms per deciliter. And then you go back all the way to a natural concept and your testosterone drops to 500 nanograms per deciliter. You're not going to be able to keep all that. We're probably keeping people at around 1,000 nanograms per deciliter versus. So they're always going to be able to keep most of that tissue. And if anything, what they're losing is the excess volume that we put into that tissue over the course of that push. And now they're maintaining the structural proteins that we've developed. And over time, we're going to push this structural protein more and more and more and more and more with every growth cycle that we do. You might be losing weight post steroid cycle or push phase, right? But you're not losing muscle tissue post growth phase. If you are, something's wrong.
yeah, I agree. That was easy.
So I only have time for a couple more. So I'm going to do, I have 2 more left. How do you feel about 75 hard? Which I don't know. You familiar with that, Steve?
Kind of.
Yeah, I don't really know all the details, but I would still say it's stupid. It's dumb. It's retarded.
I think,
Yeah,
yeah, anything with like a name that has like a time frame, I think is dumb. I mean, I think it's good for people to get into those habits, but it's just stupid in general, I think.
Yeah, I think I'm actually surprised at how long this has been around now, even though it's only been a couple of years or something like that, or a few years. I don't know. But it's like some guy created this that owns a supplement company, mind you, right? Which is like they're the kings of creating shit within this industry that don't really need to happen. But like the idea behind it is like I'm an entrepreneur. I'm this guy, and like these are fucking fucking habits and solid advice and a way for you to like change your life and do all this shit. It's like, why do you need to push yourself to a level that you'll never ever ever be able to sustain, right? In order to be able to create more dedication and commitment within your process. Like, if anything, I'd be more of a fan of somebody taking little by like, you're gonna go work out twice a day every day. Shut the fuck up.
That's
You
the
know
only
what I
thing
mean?
I'm like, well, that's fucking dumb because that isn't sustainable. That wouldn't be the habit that you want to build because
Yeah, exactly.
that's
Exactly.
it's not realistic.
Yeah, I know the thought process might be there. Well, let's shoot for all of these habits. And then when we taper down to what's realistic, we're still
It's
better off
easy
than we were
or whatever.
before. But it's like, but says who?
But
Like,
just start
we
there,
all have seen
yeah.
this. Yeah, we work in the bodybuilding industry where we see people go to attain things that are unrealistically sustainable. And what happens to many people after that is they end up with this rebound effect, right? As it relates to all of their habits, not just food, but all of their habits, to where you starved yourself of certain things for so long and you pushed a certain concept for so long that now your body almost gravitates to doing the exact opposite in a lot of cases. Like, you're done, you're burned out. You don't want to keep doing that shit. To me, 75 hard is literally one of the dumbest things that you could possibly get yourself involved with. And
That's
in
true.
no way,
I
shape,
never
or
thought
form is what
about
you're
it that
doing
way, that it
sustainable.
is such an extreme that like you're
begging
bound
for
to want to
back-
get
yeah.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I've heard about the 2-a-days thing. Outside of everything you touched on too, Tim, I could be wrong, right? But from what I've seen and what people have told me over the years, they literally just want you to pick a quote unquote diet of your choice and follow it over the 75 days. So like, let's say you like pick the keto, pick Mediterranean, pick how the fuck is that helping anybody?
And then
if you
you're
don't know
training
what the
twice a
fuck-
day.
if
Well,
you
there's
don't-
other
or
things too,
working
though. It's
out.
not just dieting. It's like you're literally supposed to work out twice a day. You're supposed to read like 15
Also, the
pages of a
pictures you're
book.
supposed to take. No, it's 10. I think it's 10 pages. It might be whatever. It doesn't
Whatever, I
matter.
don't fucking
I
know.
think that's still
I
like
feel like if anything, that's
like
just,
pictures
as you said,
every
too,
day. It's supposed to be pictures. Like, okay,
Like-
that's not healthy.
Yeah.
a lot of busy individuals who have significant other spouses, kids, full-time jobs. Like, I don't know how the fuck they're gonna work out twice a day when
Twice
we're
a
just
day,
when
yeah.
we're just helping our lifestyle clients find fucking time to work out 4 times a week.
Yeah.
Bro, I can't work out. Like, I
No.
can't work
I
out.
don't
Like,
work out.
I would have to wake up fucking 3 a.m. everywhere if I want to wake up. Shut up, Matt. I hear you over there. He didn't say anything. I can just hear it in the back of my
yeah,
head.
yeah.
But yeah, if I had my own in-ground pool in my backyard like Matt does, then I'd work out every day. But I don't fucking have it. All right.
I got
So-
an above ground pool from Walmart here in my yard.
Do you really? So when you guys are, yeah, there you go. So when you guys fall asleep at night in the next couple of weeks, I'm
There's
gonna come
there's the
by.
shed.
I'm gonna fucking pack that shit up and I'm gonna move it to my yard.
There's the shed. There's the pool. No, it's not packed up. It stays up.
I know I'm gonna pack it up though. I can take it.
I mean, if you want to,
Fucking for sure.
you
100%.
got to argue with my.
I'm sure.
36
I could definitely.
pregnant wife.
I could definitely find some heroin heads that go around stealing copper and stuff like that. That can go in your backyard and fucking cinch that shit up within a matter of hours. I'll fucking, pay them off and I'm good to go.
I'm coming out back with my shotgun.
I'm not going to be there. So I'm going to be the foreman. I'm just going to be directing people on what to do. All right. What do you got, Steve?
I don't have nothing. You said you had two more.
Oh, all right. Trying to decide between wellness and this is one that I didn't really understand. Like, it's not really a question that we could that we could help. And like, I checked this person's profile too. Now I don't want to know if they're on or not. So I don't want to be a dick.
Fucking creep.
No, well, I mean, I don't know who this is. It was somebody that they work with a coach. And from what it looks like, they just competed. And I'll be honest, like, it wasn't the best shape that I've ever seen by any stretch of imagination.
When you say shape of conditioning or
conditioning, muscularity, the whole 9 yards. But the conditioning really wasn't there to be on stage, period. And then there wasn't a lot of muscularity. There's not, you can't tell at that point how balanced somebody's shape is because they're just unconditioned. Right. There's not enough muscularity. So yes. I don't know. They could have really great shape if they're in proper conditioning. But the question or the comment they left was trying to decide between wellness and bikini. Feel like I'm in between. So, I mean, I do see this quite often with a lot of women that are hopping on stage and doing both still, bikini and wellness. And I would say 99.9% of the times when I see that, they're a bikini competitor. And we went through this with a client of mine, recently too, where everybody was telling her over and over again.
Marina just went through with mine with Abby. Remember? Marina, she wanted to do wellness a year ago when she came.
And I was like, immediately now.
I told her, and I said, listen, run it by Marina when you start posing at 24, whatever weeks out it was. And I said, you're going to be bikini, but why? And then an hour later, yeah, Marina said you're right. I should, we'll stick with bikini. I'm like, I told you, because you don't have as much muscle as you think, but she's all day bikini.
Yeah.
Oh, and she's so bikini that it's like, I even told Steve, I'm like, she kind of reminds me of me. Like,
yeah, like she's super. Shape. Yeah, she does. She does actually, the shape. But the bottom line there though is like, that's a little bit different in the sense that it's super easy to tell her. Like some of these other women, it's like you legitimately just don't have enough muscularity. Like you're just fat. Like that's really what it comes down to. Mm-hmm. Somebody told you like your lower body is bigger, you belong in well. That's not true. It's just body fat in a lot of cases. Mm-hmm. You really need to pull down that body fat. And now you're in a more realistic, environment, so to speak, to choose your category. But like I see that way too often at this point that we have a lot of women that are walking on stage and think that they're wellness. And the reality is you're just not conditioned enough for anything. And then somebody somewhere along the way tells them like, oh yeah, wellness is a little bit of a softer look or something like that. It's like,
no,
yeah, listen, yeah, you have to have humongous amounts of muscularity in your lower body. And then at the end of the day, it's never really a softer look unless you're in the off season, because you have so much muscle peeking through there in the lower body that you always have full on, separation, striations, all that different stuff going on there. So like, you're just like, if you don't have any visible lines in your legs, the bottom line is you cannot ever consider yourself wellness. Like you've never been there. You have no idea what level of muscularity you have. Like at that point, it's not wellness, it's body fat. And that's
I think also at this point, people still in their head are ranking the like muscularity or the like level of these female divisions as bikini, wellness, figure, woman's physique, bodybuilding. When in reality, at this point, it is bikini, figure, wellness, so on and so forth. Wellness, they require so much muscle at this point. Like thinking between bikini and it doesn't make any sense anymore. It doesn't make sense to be in between bikini and wellness unless you are at the higher level of like national level and the judges are telling you like, ooh, your lower body is getting a little bit too much. At that point, yeah.
Yeah, and then you have a solid 2-3 years worth of growth you have to do to be able to make it to that next level. But the bottom line, though, there is we also, I think, get inundated with this idea of like amateur. So people are going to these amateur level shows, even at the national level. And some of them are like, a realistically attainable look still in the lower half. And it's like, hey, listen, that might be what's necessary to be able to make it to that. Like, so in other words, you could win a local show and not be like on tons of gear or whatever, and not have like the craziest lower body as far as overall development, but you have a bigger lower body and you're well conditioned right at that local show. And now you can win it overall. You can win your class for sure. You get nationally qualified, but then you go to that national level show and you start to recognize, again, there's a lot of those women there. So they have bigger lower bodies than what would fit in bikini, right? But they have more conditioning there, right, than they do in bikini. And again, more muscularity than what would fit in bikini, right? But at the same time, they're just not at that level of that top 5 call out within that class and even the national level. And they most certainly years away from being productive on a wellness stage in the IFBB. And it's like, it is a pretty demonstrative look for that lower body in the IFBB at this point, especially if you want to be at the top level of the IFBB. Like, bottom line is that is a category where, to Marina's point, there is a ton of muscularity that goes into that. Seen women, like I can think of one off the top of my head that was an IFBB pro figure competitor for a long time. And now she's decided that she wants to switch over to wellness, right? Because she likes to look more, she likes the off-season look more, all this different stuff. And she's doing the damn thing, but it's literally taken her years to be able to bring up her lower body to meet the criteria of wellness when she was already a pro and a very muscular pro at that too, in figure.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So it's like she needs years to be able to create the look for wellness. There's a lot of growth that needs to take place there for that level of competition.
Yeah.
All right. We got everything out. Everybody good? Everybody good? Anybody want to talk about 75 hard sucking dick for a little? No, I'm only kidding. I got 15 minutes for my next call anyway, so just enough time to piss and recaffeinate.
Recaffeinate, bro.
I'm
Oh,
joking. I'm
Oh my
kidding.
God,
Nobody
yeah,
fucking-
it's
How much
7
caffeine did you have today?
PM.
What? I had a nitro cold brew, a hot coffee from Starbucks, 2 coffees this morning when I woke up. And I think that's it today. That's not
We
bad. A
also
couple
appreciate-
DCs.
Can we also appreciate my leg being bent right now?
Wow.
That can I see that leg again real quick?
Oh,
Oh yeah, see instantaneous Viagra right there.
oh yeah,
Oh yeah, some inner thigh action.
Oh,
my
yeah.
God.
Yeah, baby.
right.
All right, I'm
will-
gonna go whack off. So we gotta close it out.
Yeah,
We
let me
gotta close it out.
sign us off. Thank you everyone for listening to Coach's Corner. We will catch you next week.